Gaslit streets of Victorian London, fog rolling in, a shadowy figure disappearing down a narrow alley. The sound of church bells toll faintly in the distance. London, the late 1800s, a city at the heart of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Its streets glowed with gaslight, its docks bustled with trade, and its newspapers promised progress and prosperity. But beneath the surface, down narrow alleys and along the black waters of the Thames, London hid its darkest secrets. Before Jack the Ripper terrified the East End, another killer was already stalking the shadows. A man who dismembered his victims with chilling precision and left their remains floating in the city's river. His murders spanned nearly 2 decades. His methods shocked even hardened detectives, and some believe his crimes may have directly inspired or even been connected to Jack the Ripper himself. This is the story of the Thames Torso Killer, the Victorian serial murderer who remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 19th century. Make sure you stay till the end of the video because there is a lot to unveil. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel as we bring you historical true crime. Like, share, and subscribe. London in the shadows. Visuals, wide shots of London smog, the crowded docks, workhouses, children begging in the street. The camera pans over Victorian engravings of slums and prisons. To understand the fear that swept through London during the Torso Murders, we need to step back into the world of Victorian Britain. It was an age of contradictions. On one hand, progress, invention, and wealth. Railways stitched the nation together. Queen Victoria reigned over a global empire, and the middle classes enjoyed newfound luxuries. But for the poor of London, life was a daily struggle for survival. The East End in particular was a world of squalor. Overcrowded tenements, open sewers, and streets teeming with disease and hunger. The Thames, that mighty river, was both a blessing and a curse. It carried ships, wealth, and goods, but it was also London's sewer. Anything could disappear into its black waters. Rubbish, disease, or something far worse. In this environment, crime thrived. Pickpockets, burglars, and violent gangs ruled entire neighborhoods. But far darker predators walked among them. The city was unprepared for the idea of a serial killer. In fact, the very term didn't yet exist. But by the early 1870s, London was about to be introduced to a murderer unlike any it had seen before. Chapter 2. The First Trunk Murder. A reenactment. Rowboats pulling a floating trunk from the water, curious crowds gathering at the dockside. Police officers in Victorian uniforms examine the grisly contents. On May 5, 1873, boatmen working near Battersea pulled a heavy wooden trunk from the river. At first, they assumed it contained smuggled goods or stolen property. But when police pried it open, the scene was like something from a nightmare. Inside were the dismembered remains of a young woman. Her head, arms, and legs had been severed and carefully packed into the trunk. Her torso was missing entirely. Doctors examined the remains and came to a chilling conclusion. The dismemberment was not clumsy. It had been done with skill. The cuts were precise, almost surgical. Whoever had carried out this crime knew exactly what they were doing. Newspapers immediately seized on the story, dubbing it the Battersea Mystery. Readers were horrified, and rumors swept across London. Who was this woman? Why had she been killed? And most disturbingly, who could have committed such an act? Theories abounded. Some claimed it was the work of a butcher. Others whispered about docutors conducting sinister experiments. But despite the publicity, the woman's identity was never discovered. And without modern forensics, detectives had little to go on. The case soon went cold. For the public, it was a gruesome one-off. A shocking murder, yes, but not a pattern. Not yet, but the killer had only just begun. The pattern emerges. Foggy riverbanks, Victorian police rowing lantern-lit boats, eerie silence as shapes float in the current. 3 years after the Battersea Mystery, Londoners assumed the horror had passed. But in 1874, more dismembered remains surfaced. Again, the Thames delivered its grisly secret. This time, A woman's body parts appeared in multiple locations. Limbs pulled from the water, a torso found near Hungerford Bridge. The press connected the dots. This was no one-off crime. This was a pattern. The killer had struck again. The newspapers sensationalized the story, calling it the work of a river fiend. But Scotland Yard was lost. The forensics of the day could only confirm what they already knew. A skilled hand had cut these bodies apart. By now, one question haunted detectives. Were these women prostitutes from the East End, chosen because no one would miss them? Or was the killer targeting women more broadly, picking victims at random? No one could answer. What they knew was this: London had a predator, and he was still at large. Chapter 4. The Whitehall Mystery, 25:00, 33:00. Scotland Yard construction site. Laborers uncovering a wooden box beneath scaffolding. In October 1888, the heart of London's policing was literally built over horror. Workers building the new Scotland Yard headquarters discovered a wooden box buried in the cellar. Inside was the torso of a woman, dismembered with the same precision as the previous cases. The newspapers went into a frenzy. How could the killer place a body part inside the very foundations of London's police headquarters? The case was dubbed the Whitehall Mystery. But what made it even more chilling was the timing. Because across the East End, another series of killings was unfolding. The murders of Jack the Ripper. Two killers? Operating at the same time? Some began to wonder, were they one and the same? Chapter 5. The Pinchin Street Torso. A gaslit alley in Whitechapel. Policemen huddled around a bloody sheet. September 10th, 1889. A woman's torso was discovered beneath a railway arch in Pinchin Street, Whitechapel, the very heart of Ripper territory. Unlike the Ripper's victims, this body had been meticulously dissected. No organs were removed, no ritualistic display. Instead, this was clinical, detached, and chillingly efficient. For the first time, detectives began openly debating. Were the Ripper and the Torso Killer different men with different methods, or the same man experimenting with his craft? The Ripper killed quickly in alleys under pressure. The Torso Killer worked slowly, in private, with time and skill. Two halves of a whole, or two monsters stalking London simultaneously? The question has never been answered. But in 1889, the terror was very real. Londoners lived in fear that no woman was safe. Fear and theories. Victorian sketches of suspects, doctors, butchers, policemen debating in smoky rooms. The crime sparked countless theories. Some suspected a disgraced surgeon, using his anatomical knowledge for unspeakable purposes. Others whispered about foreign butchers, sailors, or medical students. One theory even linked the killings to the illegal trade in human remains, body parts sold to teaching hospitals. Could these women have been murdered not just for cruelty, but for profit? And then there was the darker theory that the Torso Killer and Jack the Ripper were one and the same. Detectives pointed to the overlap in time, geography, and victim profile. Both targeted vulnerable women. Both used blades with skill. Both mocked the authorities by striking under their very noses. But the differences were glaring. The Ripper left his victims where they fell, bloody, grotesque, staged for maximum fear. The Torso Killer concealed his crimes, carefully dismembering bodies to erase identity. Two killers, or one man with two faces. The truth remains buried in history. Chapter 7. The Investigation Stalls. Scotland Yard offices piled with files, frustrated policemen at their desks, dim lamps burning late into the night. Despite the best efforts of Scotland Yard, the investigation went nowhere. There were no reliable witnesses, no clear suspects, no surviving victims to speak. Forensics was still in its infancy. Fingerprinting would not be introduced in Britain until 1901. Blood typing was decades away. DNA analysis, more than a century. The police had nothing but body parts, speculation, and fear. By the early 1890s, the killings appeared to stop. Perhaps the murderer died. Perhaps he was imprisoned for another crime. Or perhaps he simply moved elsewhere. The Thames, once a dumping ground for horror, grew quiet again. But the memory of the murders never faded. Chapter 8. Legacy of a Forgotten Killer. Modern-day London. The Thames at dusk. Archival photos of crime scenes fading into the present skyline. Today, the Thames Torso Murders remain one of the most chilling unsolved cases of the Victorian age. Overshadowed by Jack the Ripper, the Torso Killer is often forgotten. Yet in many ways, he was more terrifying. He didn't kill in a frenzy. He killed with control, with calculation, with skill. Historians still debate whether the two killers were connected. Was the Ripper merely a copycat, or were Londoners haunted by two predators at once? What is certain is this: the Torso Murders exposed the vulnerabilities of Victorian society. Women lived and died unseen. The police were powerless, and the city's greatest river became a graveyard. As the fog rolled across the Thames, London never knew when or if the killer would strike again. And more than a century later, his shadow still lingers. The Thames Torso Killer, the Victorian serial murderer who may have inspired Jack the Ripper, and whose identity remains a mystery to this day. Unsolved. London, 1873 to 1889. If you enjoy this mystery true crime, make sure you check our other videos because we have tons of them. And make sure you subscribe to our channel because why not?